Welcome to the BSSK Radio Show. I'm your host, Onomi Ishoro. This show is all about you, your music, your voice, your stories. In these series of interviews, we're talking to people who have left their native lands and have moved to another country to teach English. My guest tonight is Erhi G. Hello.
Hello, Nomi, and it's Erhi with a silent H, but I won't go there.
Okay, Erhi. I'm always pronouncing people's names incorrectly. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, I'm 33 years old. I currently live in Sheffield, UK. I lived in Japan for 3.5 years. Well, originally from Nigeria, but I've basically lived equal amounts of times in Nigeria and in the UK. So I think that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
So as the audience can hear, we are speaking to another British person.
So, has there been a glut of Brits on your show?
Well, it's only been, the last guest and you now makes two.
Oh, right.
So people might be a little bit confused because this show is predominantly speaking to people who've moved to other countries. But as he said, I know I pronounced your name wrong again. I'm just going to call you G. Can I just call you G?
Call me Erhi. Erhi. It's quite easy.
Erhi, okay, Erhi.
Yes.
So, Erhi actually inspired me to move to Korea. I was actually studying in the UK. I was doing my degree at the time, and we were working at a research company.
Yeah, I thought it.
And he said he was off to Japan to teach English. And at the time, I was like, oh, wow, Japan, that seems so exotic and exciting. So after I finished my degree, I decided that I was go to Asia and teach English to follow Erhi's example. So let's move on to the first question. Why did you decide to teach in Japan? When I was in school, when I was about 14, I read a book called Shogun, and it's by James Clavell, and it was about feudal Japan, and lots of things in that book just resonated with me. And there's this particular line about a man having three hearts. One heart he showed to the outside world, one heart he showed to his friends and family, and his close-knit circle, and one heart he kept to himself. And it just felt, lots of things felt really touched me. And I said to myself when I was about 14, 15 that I had to visit Japan. After I finished my degree, I was talking to a mate of mine who worked in Hong Kong, and I just said to him casually, look, I'd love to go to Japan and maybe come and visit him. He says, okay, why don't you look into teaching in Japan? And I did a Google search on teaching English in Japan, and found 3 companies and applied and got the job. So yeah, why did I teach English in Japan? One, I wanted to experience Japanese culture, and the best way to do that was to live and work there. So teaching English was the easiest avenue to doing that. Excellent. How long were you teaching in Japan again?
I was there for 3.5 years in total.
3.5 years?
Yeah. 3.5 years, and I moved 3 times in Japan. So I started off in a small town called Kitanabe, which is like on the island of Honshu, south of Osaka. But I moved to Osaka itself for a year, and my last 1.5 years was spent in Tokyo.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. And how would you describe Japanese culture to people who have never been there before?
All right. So stepping off the train at the first little town I worked in, Kitanabe, it was something out of a film. It was like I don't know. It was height of summer. It was really hot. And it was just so quaint and idyllic, and it was like something out of a movie, like Big Trouble in Little China or something. And it was so different from anything I'd ever experienced. It was almost alien, the posters and banners all vertical instead of horizontal, and it's I suppose nothing in the West can actually prepare you for Japan if you've never been before. And you've got images of Asia from the TV. Like you see China, you see Vietnam, you expect street markets. That doesn't exist in Japan. It's very Japan is Japan and quite unique that way. So how do I describe Japanese culture to people? It's uniquely Japanese, and
Well, what does that mean? Uniquely Japanese.
It means nothing compares to it. But having said that, it's also quite African.
Quite African.
Really?
Oh, you have to explain that in more detail to my listeners.
It's quite.
That's the first time I've heard that.
No, because I had this chat with some other people of African descent who moved to Japan, and they find it quite easy to fit in because basically the roots of Japanese culture is quite similar to African or Nigerian culture in my case. Respect for your elders, family is very important. Respect for elders, family is important. Faith is very important to Japanese people as well. Same thing with Nigerians, and this thing about wa and about I suppose it's a bit different in Japan. You have wa and like harmony of the group, while in Nigeria people are quite individualistic. But in many ways, I find it was really quite African. The respect you show to your elders, and the respect you show to your superiors. I found this was quite Nigerian, and the fact that Japanese don't like confrontation was also quite Nigerian. If you wouldn't want to confront your elders, your superior, you try and do it in a roundabout way rather than confront them directly. So that in that respect, for me, it was quite African, Japanese culture.
That's interesting. And also, a lot of the Japanese names that I've come across sound kind of African.
Yes.
Or Nigerian. It's quite weird.
Yeah, like my name, for example, Erhi, is a very popular Japanese girl's name. So once people heard my name, they just go into the Japanese song. It went like, Erhi, my love, so sweet. And every time I introduce myself, the people would just burst into song, Erhi, my love, so sweet. So it was interesting.
Yeah, and when they hear my name, Ishoro, my family name, they automatically think Japanese. Especially a lot of the Korean people here, when they hear my name, and then they see me, it's like, oh, okay, you're definitely not Japanese, but just upon hearing it and reading it, they kind of assume that. Okay, so did you consider teaching in any other countries before deciding to go to Japan?
No, it was Japan or the highway for me. Japan was the only Asian country I actually wanted. Well, it was Asian country I wanted to go to the most, and I would not have gone to any other country. But now it's different. I'd like to. Obviously, now I'm a bit older. I don't think I'd ever have the chance to do what I did again because of work commitments and stuff like this. But I'd love to be able to, spend a year teaching English in another Asian country. Yeah. But at the time, Japan was the only thing on my mind.
You missed out. You should have come to Korea.
Yeah, I actually could have come to Korea on holiday from Japan as well. But when I was living in Japan, I thought to myself, there's so much to do in Japan that I should focus on Japan. So lots of my time in Japan was actually spent traveling within Japan. And I went to Hong Kong and what's that Portuguese island off Hong Kong now? Can't remember. I went to Hong Kong, I went to India, I went to Cambodia, but those are the only travels I did. The rest of 2.5 years I didn't set foot off Japan. Everything was done in Japan.
Okay, great. As a black man in Japan, did you face any specific issues regarding your skin color?
So during the interviewing process for the job, you hear lots of stuff about how Japanese are xenophobic, and when I passed, I scaled through all the hurdles, and I was talking to my recruiter, and she asked me if I had any concerns. And I said to her, look, we hear all this stuff about Japanese being quite xenophobic, and I do worry, being a big. I'm 6'2", and I weigh about 110 kilograms now. Exactly. I would be quite. And then she said I'd have to teach children. And I was quite worried that I'd be scary to the children, or that would I be ostracized because of my skin color and my presence. Because there's no hiding me. If I'm in the room, or the crowd, you will see me. And she said to me that basically the people I would be in contact with, the kids and the students, are people who want the exposure to Western culture and who have been exposed, so I should be okay, and that basically with the younger generation, the xenophobia wasn't that blatant. and that maybe I could have problems with elder people, but I most likely wouldn't be in contact with those older people. Now, that was pre-Japan. Post-Japan, as I said, the first town I went to, Tanabe, a small town by Japanese standards, my no, I did not face any specific issues regarding my skin color. Then I suppose that's also to do with where I'm coming from as a person, because even in the UK, when I was growing up in the UK, when I was in school, me and my sister were the only black kids in the entire school. So I'm quite used to being the only black person, in where I am. And even when I was living in Nigeria, we live in a state full of like German expatriates. So I think I've developed quite a thick skin in regards to that. I'm pretty much oblivious to such things, and I just act. I don't look for this. I don't look for discrimination. I don't look for ways I might be treated differently. So I think that shield, that buffer that one has built personally, sort of, might also protected me from any sort of issues I might have faced in Japan regarding my race. I mean, there was one time I was on the train in Osaka, and I got on the train, and this woman started screaming. I think
she was screaming because she saw you.
She was screaming like berserk, like a berserker, just a stream of like incoherent Japanese. My Japanese wasn't very good then, but she was really screaming and pointing at me and backing away and saying something about American GI, but blah 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 blah.
Okay.
And she backed out of the carriage and got off the train. So she was obviously a bit disturbed because that sort of outburst is really not Japanese at all. And obviously she might have had a bad experience with Japanese GI, with an American black GI, but that's the only time that, because when she started screaming, I actually looked around to make sure she was, she was like, it was directed at me, because I was like, I stopped on the train. I wasn't even close to her.
Yes.
But I think that was the only incident where I've particularly felt singled out. There has been other times when I was stopped by the police at on my bicycle out at my school. This one other time, and I felt I did feel a bit victimized. But I looked around and they're stopping everybody, like we've got the Japanese people as well. But I made a bit of a show at being stopped because I thought I was a teacher teaching English. I was right in front of my school, and I had my ID on me, so they shouldn't have searched my bag, but they were searching everyone's bag then as something was going on in the area. But there's two incidences. The second one with the police isn't really an incident because it's doing it to everyone else. But yeah, the only one incident where I might have had issues directly because of my race was that crazy one on the train. But apart from that,
what about the converse of that in regards to people coming up to you to talk to you specifically because you are a black man, or having ladies coming up to you, being attracted to you because of the color of your skin? Because we hear, I've heard that the Japanese are very open to dating out of their race.
So basically with the Japanese, you have the gaisen, and you have the gaisen are the people the Japanese people who like foreigners. And within the gaisen, you have the gaisen who like white foreigners, you have the gaisen who like black foreigners. And they actually don't really... They're quite they're quite specific in their taste. If they like white people, they go for white people only. If they like black people, they try as much as possible to go for black people only. So then again, because I'm also big, black, and scary, I had a student tell me once that she saw me cycling on the street, and I was like, okay, what's her name? Setsuko. Why didn't you say hi to them? Because when you're not in class, when you're on the street, you look so formidable and scary. So I think people. It would take a certain sort of Japanese person to approach me on the street, but especially if I've got my street face on, which is not a hard face. It's just like when I'm not smiling at night, I can look a bit frosty, and that's what I call my street face. So I'll take a certain sort of Japanese person to approach me. But when I was in clubs and stuff, I did get lots and lots of girls. Again, the gaisen type, like the black boys, who would be pretty much all over me, and. They love my hair. They stroke my hair, and they're like, kimochi, poodle no kemitai, which means it feels like a poodle's fur. I'm like, oh my god. And then one time I was on the beach with my students, and I had a little boy come up to me, and he held my hand. He was really a cute little kid, and he licked me.
He licked you?
Yeah, he licked me, and then he licked his white T-shirt to see if my color would come off on his T-shirt. But
Wow.
and his parents were like mortified, like, "Oh, sumimasen, I'll go nasai, oh, sumimasen." And so they're apologizing all the way. But yeah, it's
I
it's
remember you telling me a story about how someone asked to see your bottom to see if it was the same color as the rest of your skin.
well, yes. Basically, I think it was to do with tan lines and stuff like. Yes. Because like in summer the Japanese get much. Well, basically the parts that are less exposed to the sun are lighter
Yes.
with light skinned people, and yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was a student actually asked to see my bottom, to see if it was the same color as the rest of me, and I showed. It was a girl and a boy. I showed it to them outside club, obviously, and yeah, they were like quite surprised that it was the same color.
Okay, let's go into the first track. What's the first track that you've selected for us to play?
The first track that I selected is Yellow Ochre. Yeah, I listened to it. Well, I quite like it. It's quite funky. I like my I like my funky sort of music. So I chose this as the first track, Yellow Ochre.
Okay, here's the track. Enjoy that track.
Yes, I did. It ticked all the boxes I had with that sort of music. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Excellent. So, what part of Japan were you teaching in, and how was your social life like there? I mean, I know you've told me a couple of cities that you were in, but could you just elaborate a bit more?
Okay, so the first city I was in was Kitanabe, and this was south of Osaka, about 3 hours south of Osaka.
Mm-hmm.
And social life there. It was a really small town for Japanese standards, so there was 73,000 people in that town. There was 300 foreigners. Of those 300 foreigners, there was 50 Western foreigners. And of the 50 Western foreigners, there was only one black person, which is me.
Okay.
And so pretty much everybody knew my business. Socializing in a small town was really good because Kitanabe was a small town in the middle of the countryside, so it was a hub sort of town. So lots of people would come to that town to socialize. It had more bars per square meter than any other city really in Japan at the time. So it was really good. It had lots of little bars and izakaya, which is like a Japanese pub, and yeah, it was really good for eating out, and that's pretty much all I did. Well, lots of what I did there was going for drinks and meals with students. So social life started from students. I met students, and they introduced me to other people,
Mm-hmm.
and then I took over from a teacher. Well, the teacher I took over from introduced me to some locals as well. So they were actually really, really good in welcoming me to Kitanabe and integrating me into the social life there. So it was really good. And I met with other English teachers as well, with other companies. So that's sort of like I had my foreign sort of circle and my Japanese circle.
Okay.
And yeah, social life was brilliant. And then again, I would go to Osaka as well every month to meet up with my the friends I made when I was training in England who'd moved to Osaka. So yeah, that was Kitanabe.
Kitanabe.
Yes.
Okay, and then you moved to another city?
Then I moved to Osaka, which is a big city. It was a
Okay.
huge city, and I was teaching in I suppose you call it the suburbs. So it was not exactly in the Shitamachi, which is downtown. It was like maybe an hour, no, 45 minutes away from downtown. But it was a bigger city,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was more cosmopolitan. There was much more foreigners, and there was actually I was in a bigger school as well, so there were many more students, and there were a younger bunch of students. Well, not younger, they were like university age. So that gave my social life a whole new layer to it because they like to go out a lot and party, and they'd invite me along, and I'd meet their friends, and I'd go to like one of them was a cheerleader, and I'd go to her practices. The other one played lacrosse, I'd go to his practices, and yeah, Osaka was a much bigger city, so there's much more to do. There's Universal Studios Japan. The downtown had great shopping and like great little like quirky bars, and there's bowling. I started bowling, yeah, in Osaka. Something I did quite often when I was living there.
Okay.
And yeah, and also even when I was in Kitanabe, I was traveling quite a lot locally, so I'd be going on hiking trips. I climbed Mount Fuji when I was living in Japan, actually. So that was
Wow.
really good. That was really good experience. I went to Fuji-Q Highland, which is like a theme park when I was living in Japan. I went to Studio Ghibli in Osaka as well. So it was quite a busy social life, to be honest, living in Osaka. Yeah, even in
Awesome.
Kitanabe, it was really good.
Awesome. Awesome. So you've been away from Japan for a while now. Is there
Yes.
anything that you miss about the country?
It's funny you ask because right now I'm in a massive missing mode. I miss Japan desperately right now. I so I met and made some really good friends when I was in Japan. Most of them are Japanese, which is not surprising, but it's very nice to know that in a country that's supposed to be xenophobic, you made some really good friends there. I was invited to people's homes. I met people's parents. You know, I was taken on holiday with people to the family for ancestral homes, and I've got
Okay.
people who still send me Christmas presents and Christmas cards till now. So I miss the people I met in Japan desperately. I miss the food. Japanese food, I think, is awesome. Um,
Well, I think that's debatable.
Japanese food is awesome. There's no debate about it. If you don't like Japanese food, there's something wrong with you.
I went to Japan very briefly, and I couldn't deal with all the raw fish
Oh,
and
I love that stuff. But
oh,
the raw fish is only one aspect of Japanese food, no? It's a very small aspect. Because, again, when you're going to Japan, when I was going to Japan initially, one thought that Japanese food was all about raw fish and sushi, but there's such a variety of Japanese food, and they do this massive thing, this fusion thing. They love food in Japan as a stereotype, and they like making it a bit Japanese. So they have Italian food with a Japanese twist to it. It's amazing. It's lovely. The food is brilliant. And the alcohol is so cheap and good. Oh, I miss that country. I do. And if I can, I'd like to go back this year for summer for about 3 weeks.
okay. Upon returning back to the UK, what were the specific things that you noticed in regards to the different cultures? I just want to give my listeners a flavor of the culture in the UK, in certain parts of the UK, and then how that differs from Japan.
Well, obviously, when I got back from Japan, I found myself bowing a lot. You know, like bowing to say thank you and bowing to say excuse me and bowing to cross the street.
Hmm.
That was something that you did as de rigueur in Japan. But so the Japanese people, or English people, aren't obviously as polite as Japanese people. Customer service in England
Hmm.
was shocking compared to Japan. You walk into a bank and you have the bank girls going, "Irashaimase, Atako-san," very friendly and very approachable, grinning from ear to ear, bending over backwards to help you. Even when you went into like the 7-Eleven, the convenience stores there on the side of the road, they're so helpful and so welcoming,
Hmm.
and that was really shocking. You know, came as a bit of shock that customer service in England was just quite lazy, just quite not up to the standard I was used to.
Hmm.
What else was there? On the streets, you know, people driving, they seem much more vicious than Japanese drivers. You know, they're quite sedate in the way they drove, quite calm, I would have thought. And I found myself staring at people when I came back to the UK because
Staring at people.
yeah, because basically in Japan, a foreigner non-Japanese. Well, in like Tokyo, there's a sea of Japanese people, and it was just so odd to see like so many black people, so many other non-Japanese people, so many like foreigners, and I was like, God, they're so tall, the girls are so big.
Uh-huh.
I got to the airport, my sister came to pick me up, like, God, English girls are huge. It's compared to Japanese girls in general. So that was, the people, just the way people looked and the way they dressed was also a big shock to me, because Japanese are quite stylish and like trendy as a whole, and in England, there's a marked difference in the way people carry themselves, the way they dress, and even the body shapes and sizes. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock as well, coming back.
And what was the main reason for you leaving? I was going to say Korea. I'm so used to saying Korea. What was the main reason for you leaving Japan?
Well, basically, the plan was to take a sort of a gap year, because after my first degree, I wanted to do a gap year, then come back to do my master's. So I only ever intended to live in Japan for 1 year, but that morphed to 2.5 or 3.5 years. And in Japan, I was teaching English, and I'm not a teacher by profession. I'm an engineer by profession. I wanted to get back to my engineering roots, and I knew that the longer there's no way I could get an engineering job in Japan without speaking fluent Japanese. My Japanese then was very conversational, but I didn't read or write it.
Mm-hmm.
I did pass the level 2 or level 3 in the Japanese proficiency test, but that's not enough. You need to pass the level 1 and be fluent to get a proper job. And I just thought, I've been out of the game for so long, I need to come back to the UK and get my master's sorted out. I had to go the position of the space in the uni before I went to Japan, and I deferred it 3 times, and they said, like, this is the last time you can defer it. So that was the main reason I left Japan. And plus, I wasn't advancing in it. I was advancing. I mean, I was a head teacher when I left, but there's only so much you can do, I think, as an English teacher in Japan. You can set up your own school, yes, but I wasn't wanting that. I wanted to get back to engineering.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the interview now. So I would want to know from you if there is any piece of advice you'd give to any potential teachers thinking about going to Japan to teach English.
Yes. I think I met up with quite a few people, especially girls, who had a really hard time in Japan, Western people. I think going to Japan, as in going to any other country really, you need to try and keep an open mind about things. And it was quite funny when I was there. We had some training, and I talked about schema and about how people think. And there was a word on the blackboard, whiteboard. It was castle, and they asked the Western person to draw a castle, and he drew the normal turrets, Disney stuff. And they asked the Japanese person to draw a castle, and he drew an Asian type of spiky thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that just really struck me that we're coming from 2 different worlds, so we can't expect to impose the way we see the world on Japanese on anywhere we go. And this is something that many people are guilty of doing. I think the advice I have to people going to Japan or any other country to teaching or live there, you have to go there with an open mind, or try and be as open as possible. Yes, there will be some things that are different. Yes, some things that piss you off. Yes, some things you don't understand. But the more you live there, the more you learn the language, you learn the culture. It's also very important. You have to try and learn the language and culture. Don't just say, oh, I'm foreign, I'm teaching English. The more you learn the language and the culture, the more you appreciate why things are the way they are.
Okay.
And the more they appreciate you. But when I was leaving Japan, I think this was the best compliment I was paid by a Japanese person. There was 2 of them. One of my teachers said to me that, look, she's never worked with a Western colleague that was as Japanese as me, but I just felt really Japanese, and in the way I dealt with people and the way I understood them, and I thought that was a really good, massive compliment. Second one, I was leaving the school, and they asked a child, one of my students, where I was from. No, where all the teachers were from. There were 3 of us. There's Layla from America, and there's Paul from Australia. She was like, Paul Sensei wa Australia-jin. He's from Australia. Layla Sensei wa America-jin. She's from America.
Mm-hmm.
Erhi Sensei wa Nihon-jin. Okinawa kimasu, which means I'm from Okinawa in Japan, which is like, basically she thought I was so Japanese. The only reason I was darker was because I lived in the south of Japan where it's really hot. And I thought that was amazing.
He was joking with you, right?
No, No, this was a child. She was quite serious.
Wow.
So I think, yeah, I mean, that shows a level of integration I had in the country and the way the Japanese people saw me. And I think, yeah, that's what anyone should try and achieve if you're living in a foreign country, really.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
No problem at all.
Let's end this interview with the last track that you've selected for us. Can you
The last track I selected, yes, is called Erhi G. Again, a bit of a funky track from the funky kind of guys. Well, not funky in the American way of thinking, but funky in the cool way.
Funky in the British cool way. Okay, so here is the track, Erhi G.